After 6 months of research, listening, observing, and learning, I discovered something surprising about what women truly want. And I'll be honest with you, it's probably not what you expect. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever noticed how sometimes a woman in your life says one thing, but deep down, she means something else? Maybe she says she doesn't need help, but what she's really longing for is reassurance. Or maybe she says she's fine, when in reality, she just wants someone to sit beside her quietly. Have you ever wondered why their needs, whether it's in relationships, in family, or even in their health, seem to evolve over time? When you're young, it might feel like the answers are obvious. But as the years pass, and especially as we get older, those answers shift. They become deeper, more complex, and often more meaningful. And here's why this matters. If you can understand these hidden needs, you can transform the way you connect with the women in your life, whether it's your wife, your sister, your mother, or even an old friend. For seniors, this isn't just about romance or relationships, it's about something far greater. It's about connection. It's about dignity. It's about making sure that in these later stages of life, the women we care about feel valued, respected, and loved. Because let's be honest, you've probably seen it yourself. A grandmother who suddenly goes quiet in family gatherings. A wife who seems more withdrawn. A sister who spends more time alone than before. At first, you might not think much of it. But over time, you start to realize, it's not just small behavior changes. It's a reflection of something deeper, something they're yearning for that often goes unnoticed. That's why I made this video. By the end, you'll discover 5 surprising truths about what women want most, especially as they grow older. And here's the powerful part. Once you understand these truths, it could completely change the way you show love and support to the women around you. It could turn feelings of distance into closeness, and replace confusion with real understanding. But before we dive in, I want to hear from you. What do you think women want most? Is it love? Is it security? Is it companionship? Or is it something else entirely? Drop a quick comment below. I'll be reading through your thoughts carefully. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join us here on Elderly Wisdom Guide, where we share life lessons, health insights, and the kind of wisdom that makes relationships stronger at every stage of life. So let's begin this journey together, because what I found might surprise you, but it could also give you the key to unlocking deeper, more meaningful connections than you've ever had before. Let's begin with the very first discovery I made. And to me, it's the one that hit the hardest, because it sounds so simple, yet it's the thing so many of us overlook. Women want to feel heard and understood. I remember sitting across from a woman in her 70s. She smiled softly and said something that has stayed with me ever since. She told me, the greatest gift my husband ever gave me wasn't diamonds. It wasn't vacations. It wasn't even financial security. It was listening without interrupting, without rushing me, without trying to fix me. Just listening. Think about that for a moment. Not diamonds. Not gifts. Not the grand gestures society often tells us women desire. No, the thing she cherished most was the simple act of being heard. As we age, loneliness can creep in quietly. Maybe the children are grown, maybe old friends aren't around as much anymore, or maybe health changes make it harder to keep up with the world outside. And in those quiet spaces, what women often crave is not someone to solve their problems, but someone who will truly hear them. Someone who will lean in, nod, and make them feel as though their words, and their feelings, still matter. Here's where so many families get it wrong. They think, if I buy her a gift, she'll feel loved. If I arrange the best care, she'll feel supported. And don't get me wrong, those things matter. But here's the truth, you can give her everything money can buy, but if you don't give her your attention, she may still feel invisible. Listening is not about fixing. It's about creating space. Space where she feels safe to share her worries, her joys, her memories, or even just the little things that happened in her day. And it doesn't have to take hours. Even 10 minutes of undivided attention, a real conversation without distractions, can mean more than the biggest gift you could ever buy. So, I want you to think about this. When was the last time you truly listened to the women in your life? Not while scrolling on your phone. Not while rushing to the next task. But really listened, with your heart as much as your ears. Because here's the secret, when a woman feels heard, she feels valued. And when she feels valued, she feels loved. It's that simple, and yet that powerful. But listening is only one part of the story. Now let's move into the second discovery, and this one completely shifted the way I think about relationships and aging. Women want emotional security more than financial security. I remember sitting with a woman in her late 60s. She leaned back in her chair and said something that cut straight through all the assumptions people make. She said, "I don't need riches at this age. I don't need fancy things. What I need is to know I won't be left alone when I need someone most." That right there is the heart of it. Because while financial support is important, and no one can deny that, it's not what women value most in their later years. What they're truly longing for is emotional stability. The assurance that someone will stand by them when health begins to fade, when challenges arise, or when the days feel heavy with silence. Here's where so many of us get it wrong. We assume security equals money. We think, if I provide a comfortable home, if I cover the bills, then I've done my part. And yes, those things do matter. But here's the truth, research shows that what women rank higher than financial comfort is companionship, reliability, and presence. Let's be real, money can buy medicine, but it can't buy the comfort of knowing someone will hold your hand during a difficult appointment. Money can pay for care, but it can't replace the steady presence of someone who chooses to stay. Emotional security is about that quiet confidence a woman feels when she knows, deep down, that she will not be abandoned, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. So, what can you do? Instead of pouring all your effort into only financial preparation, ask yourself, how can I create reassurance today? It could be something as simple as calling her every evening just to check in. It could be sharing a routine together, morning tea, evening walks, or prayer before bed. It could be making sure you're there during her medical visits, not just to sign papers, but to sit, to listen, and to remind her she's not facing this alone. Because at the end of the day, the women in your life may not remember how much money you had, but they will remember how safe they felt with you. They'll remember the steadiness of your presence, the comfort of your words, and the warmth of knowing that no matter what happened, you did not leave. Of course, security is important, but it's closely tied to the next discovery. Now let's talk about the third discovery, and this one carries a weight that so many women quietly live with. Women want to be respected, not pushed aside. I'll never forget the words of one elderly woman I spoke with. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "The hardest part of aging isn't that my body is weaker. I can live with that. What hurts the most is feeling invisible when people speak over me, as if I'm no longer part of the conversation." That statement stayed with me, because it revealed something powerful. You see, as women grow older, they don't just face physical changes, they also face a world that often overlooks their voices. In many families, older women are left out of big decisions, about finances, about healthcare, even about family traditions. And when this happens, it chips away at their sense of worth. Respect is more than courtesy. For women in their later years, respect is tied to dignity, self-esteem, and even mental health. When their opinions are disregarded, it can lead to feelings of isolation and depression. They begin to believe they no longer matter, even when they still carry wisdom and insight that could guide the very people ignoring them. Here's the tricky part, sometimes families think they're protecting women by leaving them out of stressful decisions. They believe they're being kind by not burdening them with details. But what feels like protection can often feel like dismissal. Imagine being told, "Don't worry about it, we've already taken care of everything." On the surface it sounds considerate, but deep down, it sends the message, your voice doesn't count anymore. The truth is, involvement matters. Even if the final decision has already been made, asking for her perspective shows her that her opinion still carries weight. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as asking, "What do you think about this?" or "How would you handle it?" These small invitations restore dignity, and they remind women that their experiences and values are still relevant. Because respect isn't just about giving someone a seat at the table, it's about recognizing that they've earned that seat, and they deserve to keep it no matter their age. So, here's my challenge to you: the next time you're making plans, whether it's about health care, family gatherings, or even something as small as what to cook for dinner, bring the women in your life into the conversation. Not because you need their approval, but because their voice matters. Their wisdom matters. They matter. Now let's move into the fourth discovery, and this one is as touching as it is eye-opening. Women want companionship over grand gestures. I remember speaking with a widow, a graceful woman in her late 70s. She smiled sadly and told me, "I don't want flowers every week. I don't need big surprises. What I want is someone to sit beside me during a quiet evening. Someone to share the silence with." Those words carried a truth that so many people overlook. Because as the years go by, it's not the material things that carry the greatest weight, it's the presence of another human being. Science confirms what the heart already knows: human connection is one of the strongest protectors against depression, against dementia, and against the emotional decline that can come with age. Companionship, whether it's from a partner, a child, a sibling, or even a good friend, isn't just nice to have. It's vital. In fact, studies show that seniors with regular companionship live happier, healthier, and often longer lives. Loneliness, on the other hand, can be as harmful to the body as smoking or chronic illness. That's how powerful connection truly is. But here's the misconception: many people believe that to show love, they need to organize big celebrations or buy expensive gifts. They think happiness comes from grand gestures, a trip, a fancy dinner, a shiny present. Yet, time and again, the women I spoke with told me the same thing: what they treasure most are the little moments. Sharing tea at the kitchen table. Walking slowly down the street together. Sitting quietly in the living room, not even speaking, but knowing they're not alone. Presence is the love language of later life. It doesn't require money. It doesn't demand elaborate planning. All it asks for is your time. And in the eyes of someone who is aging, time is the most valuable gift you could ever give. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with the women in your life without distraction? No phone in your hand. No rush to get somewhere else. Just you, fully there, fully present. Those are the moments that leave the deepest imprint, because they whisper, "You're not forgotten. You're not invisible. You are loved." And here's the beauty of companionship: it doesn't fade when words run out. Sometimes it's in the laughter you share. Other times, it's in the silence you keep. Either way, it builds a bond that speaks louder than any gift ever could. But even companionship has layers, and at the heart of it lies the most surprising discovery I found. And now we come to the fifth and final discovery, and to me, it's the most beautiful of them all. Women want to leave a legacy of love and wisdom. I remember sitting with a grandmother who spoke so tenderly it felt like her words could settle into your soul. She said, "I don't care how people remember my looks. I don't care if they recall what clothes I wore or what possessions I had. What I care about is that my grandchildren remember how I made them feel." Isn't that powerful? As women age, their focus often shifts. They begin to care less about personal gain or material success, and instead, they turn their hearts toward what will live on after them: their love, their wisdom, their traditions, and the values they've carried through life. This desire isn't about clinging to the past. It's about shaping the future. Yet so often, families misinterpret it. They assume when an elderly woman shares stories over and over again, she's just dwelling on old memories. They think she's stuck, repeating the past because she has nothing new to offer. But the truth is, every story, every recipe, every lesson, is a piece of the legacy she's trying to hand down. She isn't stuck, she's planting seeds in the hearts of the next generation. Her wisdom is not just for reflection, it's for guidance. Her stories aren't just entertainment, they're blueprints for resilience. Her traditions aren't just rituals, they're bridges connecting the past to the future. So how can we honor this need? Encourage the women in your life to share what they know. Ask your grandmother to tell you the recipes that were passed down to her. Invite your mother to share the lessons she learned in love, in work, in family. Record their stories, write them down, preserve them, because once they're gone, those lessons can't be replaced. And here's the most important part, when you give women the chance to pass on their wisdom, you don't just give them purpose. You also strengthen the bonds within your family. You create threads of continuity that remind you where you came from, and guide you toward where you're going. Because in the end, women don't want to be remembered for their possessions. They want to be remembered for their impact, for the way they made others feel, for the wisdom they gave, for the love they poured out. That's the kind of legacy that doesn't fade with time. And when we put all of these discoveries together, the picture becomes clear. It's not easy watching our loved ones grow older. The lines on their faces tell stories of sacrifice, of love, of resilience, and yet, sometimes we forget the weight of those stories. These discoveries remind us of something essential. Women's deepest needs in their later years are not about diamonds, luxury, or grand gestures. They're about love. They're about respect. They're about genuine connection. When we think of aging, too often we picture decline. But what if we shifted that view? What if instead of seeing aging as a loss, we saw it as an invitation? An invitation to deepen our relationships, to move beyond surface-level gestures, and to give women the things that matter most, our presence, our attention, our dignity, and our care. Because here's the truth, aging doesn't diminish a woman's value. It magnifies her wisdom, her essence, and her worth. And when we meet her needs, the need to be heard, to feel secure, to be respected, to enjoy companionship, and to pass on her legacy, we're not just caring for her body. We're nourishing her soul. Think about it, tonight, you can take a step toward this. You don't need to plan something extravagant. You don't need to spend money. All it takes is a phone call, a gentle visit, or simply sitting beside the women in your life. Ask them how they're really feeling. And then, just listen. That simple act, that small moment of presence, could mean more than you realize. Because in the end, it's not about solving everything. None of us can erase the march of time. But we can walk beside those we love. We can make sure that their final chapters aren't written in loneliness, but in love. Not in fear, but in peace. Not in silence, but in voices heard and honored. And when we do this, something beautiful happens. The last years of life don't just become an ending. They become a season of meaning, a season where love is more real, where connection is deeper, and where legacy is born. To bring it all together, let's take a moment to reflect. After 6 months of listening, observing, and learning, I discovered 5 powerful truths about what women truly want as they grow older. First, they want to be heard, not just with ears, but with the heart. Second, they long for emotional security, the kind that assures them they won't be left alone in times of need. Third, they want respect, to know their voices still matter and their wisdom still guides the family. Fourth, they value companionship above all the grand gestures, those quiet moments shared with someone who truly cares. And finally, they want to leave a legacy, not of wealth or possessions, but of love, wisdom, and the way they made people feel. Now, I want to turn this back to you. Which of these spoke to you the most? Was it the importance of being truly listened to? Or maybe it was the idea of companionship, of simply being present without distraction? Or perhaps you believe there's something else even deeper that women need in their later years. I'd love to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts down in the comments. I'll be reading through them, and I know our community will gain so much from hearing your experiences and reflections. And if this message gave you something to think about, if it reminded you of someone you love, or maybe stirred something inside you, then consider joining our community here at Elderly Wisdom Guide. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next conversation. This space is all about honoring aging, caring for our elders, and discovering the life lessons that make these years so meaningful. Before we close, I want to leave you with this: staying present, staying aware, and staying compassionate can transform the way we care for the women in our lives. Sometimes the smallest gesture, a phone call, a smile, a few minutes of your time, can become the memory that stays in someone's heart forever. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for being part of this journey. Until next time, stay wise, stay compassionate, and take every opportunity to honor the women who have shaped your life. I'll see you in the next video.